Good evening, everyone. My name is Victor Gordo, and I'm the council member for District 5 on the Pasadena City Council. And it's, as always, it's a pleasure to connect with you. We're here tonight for a very important reason. While COVID is surely first and foremost on all of our minds, and the impacts of COVID, both health-wise and the economic impacts that COVID presents, we've also had an uptick in criminal activity in and around our city. And so with me tonight are Pasadena's city manager, Steve Mermell, and our police chief, John Perez. And we simply want to go over some of the facts as we know them at the moment. You should understand that some of the facts as we know them at the moment may change. So please bear with us. And some information the police chief will ask to share may not be readily available to the public, or we may not be able to make available to the public at the moment. We simply don't know, and I'll let the chief exercise his sound judgment in that regard and tell us what can and can't be shared. And I hope you all understand that. So let me just first say that with regard, to give you a quick update on the governor's announcement, the city manager has released a press release updating folks on the governor's latest announcement. We don't yet have the written orders of the governor, but we intend to, of course, abide by the governor's order as they change. We expect within the next 24 hours to receive the governor's written orders, and then Pasadena will comply accordingly. So why are we here? We, as I said, we've had a recent uptick in and around the city of criminal activity over the course of the last few months. And it's some of the incidents have been very, very serious. And I think it's important that the public hear firsthand from our police chief and our city manager, and that you have an opportunity to ask questions. So we're here in front of the Villa Park Community Center because the latest incident was just a few days ago here at Villa Park. And so that's why I've asked the police chief and the city manager and some of their staff to join us here at Villa Park and share as much information as we can with you. Feel free to enter, if you haven't already, a question into the chat. We'll try and answer as many questions as we can, but we also want to be respectful of your time and try and limit the length of time that we're here. Of course, you can always submit questions directly to me, and I'll be sure that the police chief or the city manager or their staff get us the information that we need. With that, let me introduce John Perez, our police chief, just to cover some of the facts. Chief.
Thank you, Councilmember Gordo, for the opportunity to be here. I believe it's important to be here, so I appreciate the conversation we've been having over the past few days. In a moment, our city manager will come up and speak and provide additional information. It's fair to begin by talking from a global view. We are in a world pandemic, but let's not ignore the national epidemic of violence. We have seen homicide rates greatly increase in the city of LA. Other places, the crime has increased. And unfortunately, Pasadena, during this COVID period, has suffered the same fate with the type of crime that we've seen. I will talk a little bit about the crime on more of a citywide scale. Since last year, for 2020 this year, we have seen an 80% spike in violent crime when it comes to gun violence. We've had over 50 incidents, and we've also had over 20 people shot. And that becomes a very problematic place for the police to try to provide visibility and prevention when we know enforcement has to be done, which is one of the most complicated parts of policing. This year, we have seized close to 300 weapons, over 100 out of people's waistbands and their cars. And I do realize the impact of the view of over-policing or trying to curtail the type of policing that we need to do at times to seize these weapons and stop the crime. And so we've done that. However, with that, we still have continual gang problems. The incidents that we've seen mostly relate recently to gang violence. We are talking about our Latino and African American gangs, and has been problematic for us for the past several weeks. And so, what I will talk about now is a crime in the last few weeks around Villa Park. Number one, we've had about 7 incidents in the past 6 months here around Villa Park. We've had 3 homicides, and we've had 4 other people shot. That's problematic for us when we're looking at victims that were not gang members and were Latinos. They were not gang members. So we do know that we have leads and investigations to follow up on. We are doing our best to make these arrests. We have an outstanding group of homicide investigators that have been spending time around the clock going through all the video and information we could find. As well, our patrol officers are in the area. We are visible. However, we need to increase our visibility. We need to increase our enforcement in the area, but we also need to be very, very careful about the enforcement. We know the impact on neighborhoods when we do have to conduct traffic stops and pedestrian stops, but this will be important for us to continue to seize these weapons and stop the crime before it occurs. And so I hope that we have the community support. What I will ask from the community in terms of assistance, we do need you to call us with information when people are acting suspicious. You see what might be gang activity, or people possibly armed with weapons or handguns, or people involved in aggression, fights, or in fact, you've heard gunshots. We need to know about this information. We do want you to call us. We want to ensure that we respond quickly and that we'll be here in the community. And you'll see more officers on foot walking through this community. You'll see us in the cars. So please stop for a moment and talk to them. Give them a wave and have a conversation. I think it's important that we connect as one as we stop this crime. So I appreciate everybody's help so far. We do know that we're seeing an increase in the homicides, as we have 100% increase this year in homicides this year, with 7 homicides this year. So we do need your help, and we hope that you will be cooperative with us and give us all the help that we need. So with that, I'll give it to the city manager, and I'll be available to answer questions in a few minutes.
Thank you, Chief. I just want everyone to know that Councilmember Gordo, Mayor-elect Gordo, and the rest of the City Council provide tremendous support for myself and the police department as we try to ensure safety in our community. We've received a number of questions from you this evening that Vanya De La Cuba has been texting in. I'll start by answering a few of them that I can answer, and then I'll read others and ask most likely the chief to respond to them. So several of the questions that we're getting are around video cameras. Does the city have cameras in the park, in this park, and in other parks? And if so, or if not, what can we do about that? So the short answer is we do not have cameras in our city parks. We will be undertaking some work on this building, and we will be installing cameras, but they're mostly security cameras for this building. Over the years, we've had a lot of discussion about putting cameras in parks. Some people are in favor of them, and some people aren't. We expect that we'll be having continuations of those conversations. We'd like to hear from you. We're hearing from a number of you tonight if you think that would be a good idea. Some people have civil liberty concerns about having cameras in city parks and other facilities. But I can tell you that in the wake of a critical incident, the first thing the police department does is canvass a neighborhood to see who might have a Ring camera or other sort of camera set up. And those videos are very helpful in solving crimes. So those of you that have those sort of home cameras, if you have any video that you believe might help capture a license plate or a car, please contact the police department, and we will have continued discussions around cameras in the parks. One homeowners association asked, does the city have funds to help an HOA install cameras? The answer is possibly. We have one other homeowner association in the city where we were able to assist them install security cameras because they fell in a census tract that allowed us to use our community development block grant. So you can contact my office for a follow-up on that. I'm going to take a look at some of the other questions here and then ask the appropriate person to respond. I know the chief touched on this. Someone is asking, is this a safe community? Pasadena is a safe community. We are seeing an increase in violent crime across the nation, across Los Angeles. City of Los Angeles hit 300 murders. Pasadena has been historically a very safe community, and it's currently safe today. I'll ask the chief if he wants to expand on that.
Yes, our crime rates today are the lowest that I've seen in my 35 years with the department. We continue to try to find ways to decrease crime trends. In the middle of the year, we saw a double-digit increase in crime. Much of that was due to COVID, probably after May. And at this point, by the end of the year, I'll predict that our crime rate's going to be at the same par as it was in 2019. So usually we see a decrease every year. This year, I'm not sure we'll see that decrease in totality, but we are seeing the current increase in the violent crime.
Thank you, Chief and City Manager Mermell. You know, I want to touch on that because while the incidents are very serious and the police chief and the police department are taking them very seriously, I do think it's important to keep things in context. So that's an important question that's been asked and answered by the chief. But people, Chief, are concerned about the recent incidents appropriately. And so one of the questions that's asked is, are we going to increase foot patrols in the neighborhood? And will the officers who are assigned speak Spanish? And then we'll follow up with a question regarding the reorganization and the impacts of the gang to the gang unit.
Yes, sir. And so to answer the question on deployments, yes, the majority of our recent hires and historically, we do have Spanish speakers on every shift. And so you will see the officers available speaking Spanish. Many of us, along with the Councilmember Gordo, we were on foot on Tuesday to speak to many of the residents here in the neighborhood about the issues and about what we could do better. So you will see an increase in the officers' visibility. The priority number one will be more visibility by the police department. And what that means is that we will be out there preventing any more crime from happening. We do need to intervene and we do need to enforce, but it's important, number one, that we're seen and we're here during that period of time. So you will see that deployment.
The next question, Chief, is specifically regarding the reorganization and whether the gang unit, the reorganization of the police department, and whether the gang unit has been disbanded or conversely, if it hasn't, how we're addressing the issue of gang violence in the new and reorganized Pasadena Police Department.
Thank you again. And that question is very critical to the policing strategies and our operating philosophies. Is that in our research over the last 2-3 years, there's been much criticism about policing, and it's been expanded with the social justice movement that we've been seeing. And so many people have spoke out about the over-policing and the problems with policing and where it ends up. And many times it ends up at a critical event, whether it be an officer-involved shooting or a use of force. And many of that is because of the fact the officers are trying to patrol, trying to stop crime. And at times we get people that aren't as cooperative as they should be, and it ends up in a situation that nobody's comfortable with. So we are here today to let you know that we did eliminate the gang unit. It's been around since 1985, and we eliminated that unit of 15 officers. We moved those officers both into patrol to have a higher number of enforcement, and we also moved into critical units and created new units, one of which is the bike patrol, to make sure that we had more officers out here on bike. And we also created a group of officers that are looking at the precursors and pre-events prior to crime trends starting. So this is about being predictive and about trying to use intelligence-led information to stop crime before it occurs. And so this has been moving since February, and the team of officers is doing a great job. However, not having officers in neighborhoods every single day simply stopping people who might be gang members or doing traffic stops didn't seem to be in the best interest of the larger issues that we're having. So we do have a temporary gang unit in terms of officers being deployed, and making sure that the whole department is focused on this issue. So you will see prevention, visibility, and intervention, but you will also see enforcement. You will see traffic stops. You will see the need to search cars. You'll see individuals stopped when we need to. But people also have the ability to make complaints online, to call us, to file a complaint about being stopped. Being stopped by the police and being uncooperative makes the situation worse. Officers don't always like to do these type of stops. However, in a time when they believe a crime has occurred or is about to occur, I believe you want them to follow up on their beliefs, but to do it right, to do it safe, and do their best to use de-escalation and gain cooperation. And we do that in hundreds and hundreds of incidents per month and thousands and tens of thousands per year. So we do a great job with that, but it's not always perfect. So I'll leave it at that.
Chief, the next question, and I don't know if you can answer this question specifically, but the next question is, do we know what type of weapon was used? Was it an automatic weapon? And again, you'll use your discretion in answering that question. And well, why don't we go ahead and answer that?
So I'll answer that in brief. We are doing follow-up investigations and making sure that we keep as much of the investigation as private as possible. But it was a semi-auto weapons, which is used commonly today in gang warfare. And we have a lot of rounds being fired at some of these incidents. So we've seen this around the city. This year, we've had a number of incidents where more than 10 rounds were fired, sometimes straight up in the air, sometimes at a vehicle or in different places. So we are worried about the amount of guns on our street. Again, we've seized 300 guns this year. It's way too many. And we have to do our best to try to stop the illegal possession of handguns and the illegal use of handguns in our street.
This question is more directly properly addressed by the city manager, and it relates to people or park staff. But there's a concern that people are allowed to congregate on the east side of the park. And what is it that we can do to address that, particularly given the governor's, to prevent that if appropriate, particularly given the governor's recent orders?
Generally speaking, when we're not in a COVID pandemic crisis, people have the right to free association and gather. And so there's limited things the city can do to break up groups of people who are just outside. But for better or for worse, given that we're in the COVID situation and the governor's new order says there shall be no gatherings of people who are not in the same household. So over the course of the last 5 days or so, we've actually pulled together a team of about a dozen city employees. We've sent them out to our various parks and areas of the city to essentially break up groups of people who are hanging out. There's a lot of pickup soccer games we know in different parts of the town, and we've asked people to disperse. For the most part, they've been cooperative. We will continue to do that. We're going to focus on our enforcement efforts and making sure people comply with the order. So hopefully that will help us in this instance, stopping people from congregating in the park and in other neighborhoods.
Thank you. Chief, there's a question here first related to who do people call if they don't actually see activity but hear gunshots? Do you call 911 or do you call the regular police line? And then the second question involves relates to us involving Father Boyle from Homeboy Industries. Thank you, Chief. And so maybe you can take both of those questions.
Yes, sir. Thank you. If you hear gunshots, call 911. The most difficult part about calling 911 is trying to understand, have enough information for the dispatchers. Number one, if the dispatcher seems short with you, if you're letting them know that you're watching TV out front, and you just heard gunshots, they may cut you off and just tell you, what do you see? Don't take it personal. It's sometimes a little bit of a dragnet type of approach, but these dispatchers are some of the best in the business. And a recent study we did show that they're some of the best in the country. And so they will spend a short amount of time with you to try to grab as much information as they can to put it out to the officers as quick as they can. It becomes important. So call 911. Try to let them know which direction the shots came from. And if you see any cars speeding away, or you hear cars speeding away with engines, or you hear skidding, give them those small details of what you hear, and they'll be able to put everything together. There are times you think it's coming from a certain direction, and it might be in the opposite direction. There are times you might wait to see a police car come by your home, and it won't happen. It's not that the officers weren't in the area. It means the officers were heading into the area to see what they could find. I have not talked to Father Boyle. We have people in our community, fortunately, that know Father Boyle very, very well. And I have listened to him more than a few times in my young career and as an older person here, that I could tell you that if Father Boyle was here, what he would say to you is our young people want hope. They want opportunity. They just want to know that they're loved. They want to know that they have people out there that care for them. And so one of the issues we see young people turn to gangs is they get that in that setting. And what we have to try to do in terms of the enforcement that we're doing and the visibility is we can't forget about our nonprofits and all that we're doing and trying to create opportunity for our young people, for jobs, for school. Many people are struggling and trying to understand Zooming and classrooms on a distance learning. It's difficult for everybody. A young man in Northern California at 12 years old committed suicide with the type of stress he was under. This is a recession that we're in, as well as the other issues. We have to understand the outcome of what all this is leading to. And we do need assistance, economic help, mental health support. We need outreach. We need families to have the services they need to help them with the issues at home. We just need to have a better socioeconomic platform to really push away from the violence that we're seeing in our communities.
This is did you have some? Yeah. No. This is another question, and this is a question, frankly, that applies to various parks throughout the city, and it's a question for the city manager and the police chief. And the question involves the congregating of people in our parks who are often smoking or drinking, and what we intend to do about that. And it is an issue that's been raised with us. The city manager is aware of it, and will we bring a heightened attention, Mr. City Manager or Police Chief, when people are in our park congregating and either smoking, things other than cigarettes often, or drinking.
Thank you. And so with that question, you know, it's always a challenge in our parks because, in fact, it's a park is a gathering point for people in our communities. So it's really not that simple to ask people to leave if they feel that they are in that park just to relax or stay away from the daily things that happen in our community. So if people are smoking in the park, we have park safety specialists to address some of these issues. We also have our officers doing foot beat through these parks, but it's a careful situation that a young person's in the park, maybe a person of color, a Latino, or maybe an African-American, and right away people want them out of the parks. It's not that simple either, as our dispatchers and our police officers will push back on callers and say we either won't respond to that call or without something suspicious, don't expect anything to happen. So it does require us to have some common sense and be able to approach it in a fair and equitable way for our community. City Manager, do you want to?
Right. As I mentioned before, we're putting greater efforts on minimizing the number of people that are congregating. We have our park safety specialists deployed across our parks. As the chief indicated earlier, certainly in the wake of these violent incidents, we expect to see a stepped up enforcement effort. So there'll probably be greater engagement with some of those groups that are in the park and engaging in what most of us would consider to be a fairly antisocial behavior.
The next question, Chief and Mr. City Manager, involves the utilization of rewards in situations like this. I don't recall us in Pasadena ever offering rewards. And if you have a view, or if it's something you think maybe the City Council and or the Public Safety Committee should consider, is the question. So the use of a reward. And the second question involves, was there an incident at Viña Vieja Park today?
I'm sorry, the second part of that question, sir?
Viña Vieja, was there an incident?
Okay. And so when it comes to a reward, we do try to get money together to offer a reward. The police department is also looking at using its own funds from asset forfeiture to do that as well. We are looking at the ability to gain more information from people confidentially from either calling us or using the We Tip hotlines will oftentimes bring that into us. Just a short while ago, some of our officers just made an arrest of a person with a gun not too far from here, and they were able to take a gun off individual who was a gang member here locally. So it shows you we are doing this police work. It's happening right now, and this just occurred, so we give them credit and what we're doing.
So I'm going to take that to say it's something we're looking at,
Yes,
rewards. Okay. The next question is related to the traffic flow and traffic patterns in and around the park, and whether we would consider speed bumps. At one point, Mr. City Manager, we did consider changing the traffic flow along Garfield so that it was a one-way street. And you know, I don't expect we'll have all of the answers, but putting in speed bumps is something that we can look at. I'm not sure where we are with the traffic patterns, but maybe the city manager can address both questions.
Recently, the city council took action to modify our speed hump policy to make more streets eligible for speed humps. Now, we still have a process. It requires a vote of the people that whose homes front the street, and it requires a certain threshold. I think it's 2/3, maybe 75%, but I think it's 2/3. But only certain streets qualify for speed humps depending on the street type. So I can work with the transportation department to determine whether portions of Garfield are eligible. People have different feelings about speed humps as a traffic control device. There's also other things that the city can do to slow down traffic if that's a concern. So we do have a variety of tools in our tool bag, and working with the transportation department, we can deploy those and work with the neighborhood on a neighborhood traffic management plan.
Did you address the Viña Vieja? Viña Vieja?
What happened?
Would you address Viña Vieja? Was there an incident at Viña Vieja?
No.
No. Okay. So I'll just say that.
Yeah, there's nothing.
Okay. Okay. With regard to Viña Vieja, the police chief indicates that he's not aware of an incident, at least not an incident that would rise to his related to this today. Yeah. So not an incident today, correct? Did we want to, well, I'll let the chief consult with his staff. Let me, and the next question involves with quality of life issues in and around the park, and can be answered by the city manager. What are we doing about discarded furniture and other personal items that are left on the sidewalk in and around the neighborhood?
The quality of life issues are very important. We know that if a neighborhood looks like it's neglected and not being taken care of, some people will take advantage of that. We're fortunate in the city that our public works crews are very diligent in responding to requests from citizens for bulky item pickup. If you have a smartphone and you don't have our citizen service app, you should get it. It is a way that you can very quickly let us know when there's discarded items in the public right of way. You can give us the location by using your phone, and generally we can get it picked up in 24 hours, oftentimes even less. I would encourage all of you to do that. We all do this. We are out walking and we see a mattress or a piece of furniture and we figure someone else will call it in. Please call it in yourselves. Please use our app or call our Citizens Service Center, 744-73111. I'm sorry, 7311, and let us know. But using the app's the best way to do it, and we can get that cleaned up. Our crews are very quick, and we pick up a tremendous amount of discarded items. We want to keep our neighborhoods looking sharp. The same holds for graffiti. We get most graffiti removed within 24 hours or less. It's important that we hear from you so we can get tagging taken care of. That is another thing that sometimes leads to gang action. So we want to get those things cleaned up as quick as we can. So that's one area where you can really be helpful to us if you see graffiti to let us know. Thank you.
And Chief, I don't know if this question can be answered, but somebody would like to understand if there's a way to distinguish between fireworks or gunshots, and if people believe they've heard one or the other, should they call it in?
So call with whether you think it's fireworks or gunshots, and it would take me a little bit more time to let you know about the experience of understanding the double bang of a gunshot and what we hear with fireworks. So it's not easy. It's not something you could explain. It takes the ear kind of get learned to what might be a firework and what might be a gunshot of a more muzzle type of sound you would hear, as opposed to an open sound of a firework of an M80, if that makes sense. So it's not that simple to explain, but either way, you should give us a call on those, and then we will follow up with the investigation and get an officer out here. Our response has been phenomenal this year with the department in regards to emergency calls. And so we'll continue that type of response and our commitment to you to be here when you need us. We do have to be here enough to prevent the crime from happening and not just arresting people responsible for it. And we understand that well, and we are committed to you on that point.
So this question is for me, and it relates to reaching out, well, actually for all of us, and reaching out to Spanish speakers who maybe aren't on the Zoom call today. I've asked, first, the chief and I and some of the officers were out in the neighborhood on Tuesday. And was it Tuesday, Wednesday? It goes quick. I believe it was yesterday morning. We were out in the neighborhood talking with some of the neighbors, including some of the families of the victims. And we're going to make a concerted effort to reach out to people who may not be on this Zoom call today, who may be monolingual Spanish speaking. And so my field rep will work with the city manager staff, the park staff, as well as with the police department to accomplish that. Whether it's via Zoom or socially distanced, we'll have to, in and around the park, maybe a small group at a time. We don't know yet. We'll have to see what the governor's new order allows for, but we will make an effort to outreach to Spanish speaking monolingual residents. And I'm sorry, I think there was one other question, Chief. Oh, this question is for the chief, and it involves, were there recent incidents? There was at least one other incident. Is that on Park Street? Is that investigation still ongoing? And is it true that there was also another incident in and around the park within the last 4 weeks, besides the incident along Park Street?
Yes, we've had 4 incidents in the last few weeks, and there was a murder on Park 3 weeks ago, and one incident right before that that involved gunshots. So we are investigating all these. There's a strong belief they're related in terms of why people are committing these, and we're looking at this as gang activity and really trying to understand who's involved and doing our investigations in a very objective yet continual method. As I talked about before, our homicide investigators are some of the best in the business, and they are here nonstop doing their work, and they don't get very much rest, and they push on to do what needs to be done. And there's both an investigative end and there's a legal aspect of what they do, and they're very careful about doing that and sifting through a lot of evidence to make sure we get every piece of information that we could use. But yes, there was.
And I think we're reaching our time here. But we've heard a number of questions. One question that the chief maybe can address, or the city manager, is this related at all to some of the individuals who tend to congregate along Orange Grove, maybe consume alcohol, and or do we know if that has any relation to the incidents in and around the park, that situation?
So what we're looking at, and to look at some of the details. So we are looking at individuals that are in fact involved in gangs that might be causing these incidents, but we're also looking at innocent people who are not in gangs. And the word congregating is interesting because some people congregate that aren't drinking, or with friends, and you got others that might be drinking, or others that might be involved in gangs. And so it's a different set of people that may be targeted by gang members who are shooting. And these become the challenge for us, because we can't constantly have people move along the sidewalks. If you're congregating with friends, if you are drinking or you are drunk, we could address that. And if you are a gang member and you're on street corners and we know you're doing that, we may contact you. But sometimes we're very limited by the law and by the Constitution of trying to keep sidewalks clear so they won't be some type of violence.
So I think that answers most of the questions that have been presented that I'm able to see at the moment. But let me just say that first, I want to thank the city manager and the police chief for being out here, and all of the residents who have stepped up and provided whatever information they might have. And I encourage all of you, if you have any information related to any of these incidents, to share it directly with the police department. You can do it anonymously. I've heard lots of concerns, as has the police chief and the city manager, related to traffic, related to cameras. One of the questions involved the city being able to subsidize cameras. We don't have such a program. And the other issues involve the traffic patterns. And I can say to you that we'll look at the traffic patterns, including the possibility of speed humps in and around the city. I'm sorry, in and around the parks, and not just this neighborhood, but other neighborhoods. And as the chief has made clear, there will be increased patrols, and I would venture a guess, chief, that the increased patrols will not just be focused on this neighborhood, but other neighborhoods where we've seen an uptick in activity.
That's correct. You'll see an increase in the visibility, which is very, very important. We do want to encourage that our lives are lived normally, to get out and shop and do the things that we have and we need to do, even though it's difficult during this COVID period and more restrictions that are coming out. Earlier, I talked about We Tip, and the correction is that it is in fact LA Crime Stoppers that you could pick up on your phone. You could pick it up on the internet. They are the ones that offer much of the information. We Tip no longer exists. So the LA Crime Stoppers is where you want to land your information. And there are rewards that are offered. They're a fantastic partner. One of the main organizers of LA Crime Stoppers, with Natalie Salazar, if you're familiar with her here in the city, has done a great job over the years. So we have to make sure people are familiar with these resources outside of the city and outside of the police department as well. There are great community partners, and LA Crime Stoppers is just one of them. Thank you.
Okay, with that, unless the city manager has anything to add, Steve, did you want to add anything, or before I close it out?
Just briefly, I'd like to thank Councilmember and Mayor-elect Gordo for his leadership on this matter. You have the full commitment of my office and of the Chief of Police. It's very concerning to us whenever we have one incident of violence in our community. Seeing the uptick that we've seen recently is very disconcerting for us. I assure you that the chief and his team are doing everything they can to solve these crimes. They work leads. They are very good at finding out what's going on. Earlier, someone asked about rewards. Conceivably, that's something that we can look at. But the truth of the matter is there's people out there who know who's doing these actions. And the police department works very hard to get the information that they need to work those leads to make an arrest. We made an arrest in the horrible murder of the young lady that was found in Hahamanga. The police department does a very good job. So know that the city council, the city staff, and the police department are out there working for you. We will take a look at some of the other comments that came in this evening to try to address some of the other issues that invariably come up in these types of conversations. So thank you all, and please follow our health guidance to make sure that you and your loved ones stay safe. Thank you.
I'm going to offer 2 phone numbers real quick. Talking so quick here, I want to make sure everybody has our police phone number at 626-744-4241 is our general line information. And number 2 for LA Crime Stoppers, 1-800-222-TIPS is the important number to have. Those 2 numbers should be with you at all times. It should be in your phone, and being able to report the information we need to make our community safer. So once again, I thank you as well, Councilmember Gordo. I always want to say more Mayor Gordo, but thank you for the opportunity to be here.
So with that, I just want to say to all residents who have tuned in, let's work together. I mean, this is a very, very difficult time, and certainly these latest incidents have not made it any better. And you can be sure that my colleagues on the city council, all of my colleagues on the city council, are very concerned about this issue. We're concerned about COVID. We're concerned about the economic impacts of COVID, and we're certainly concerned about the recent uptick in violence. And we intend to agendize a few of these matters for discussion as early as December 14th. I'm sure the Public Safety Committee, I can assure you, will take up some of the questions that have been raised today. If you have any other questions that you'd like to have answered, please direct them to my office. That email address is vgordo@cityofpasadena.net, and I will forward them to the city manager and or the police chief and their respective staffs, and ensure that you have an answer to whatever question you may have related to this subject or any other. With that, I want to thank everyone and encourage all of you to stay safe. If you see anything that looks suspicious, don't take a chance. If you see anything that even remotely looks suspicious, call it in and let the police department know let the police department know. If it involves COVID, then call the code enforcement department or the health department. Steve, do we have a number for, you call the city manager's office. So thank you very much for tuning in tonight. I hope you found this helpful to at least get some of the facts as we know them. We unfortunately don't have all of the facts, but you can be certain that the police department is working very diligently to identify all of the facts. Thank you, and I hope you all stay safe this evening and beyond. Thank you. Good night.